Hi, everyone. I am Sam Osterhout, the executive producer here at Lincoln Square. I actually had to look at my title so that I knew that I was the executive. I was like, what am I again? And I am here, as I am every week, with Andra Watkins from the incredible Substack For Such a Time as This. Andra, how are you?
I'm great today. How are you, Sam?
Good. I'm I'm a little tired going into the holiday. I'm excited for this little break.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably are.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they're boycotting, they'll have even more of a break. So hopefully a
I
lot
mean,
of
it's
people are doing
wonderful. Yeah, to not even have to think about. I mean, we kind of got off the Black Friday bandwagon uh, you know, some years ago. Um, so we don't really think about it that much, but it is that, any time that you're online or, if you go on social media, it's like buy, 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 buy. It's exhausting.
it. It
Um,
is.
well, speaking of exhausting, you've been writing this week about something called the Phoenix Declaration, and it's really like you've posted twice, just the two posts, right?
Yeah, and I mean the
Yesterday,
whole week's going to be on it. I started on Monday, but we can talk a little bit about that as we go.
so okay, well, so by the time everyone out there you're seeing this, it'll be Sunday, so there will be
A whole week.
a whole week of this, and it is so compelling. And there's so much that I I want to get into, and I'm trying to find the right way in. But first, let's just start with one. All of their titles for all of their evil plans are like just inherently evil sounding, right? Like the Phoenix Declaration. That sounds so bad. Can you just tell us what it is exactly?
Well, the Phoenix Declaration is a position paper for and roadmap for transforming public schools into dens for Christian nationalist religious indoctrination. It's a very short document, and really it's presented to state school boards to sign on to it. So Florida has adopted it already for their public school system, and that's kind of how it got on people's radar because thankfully people were showing up and saying this is a Christian nationalist document. But when you read the declaration itself, it's pretty benign. It has 6 or 7 bulleted points that it wants to focus on for students that don't sound bad, really. You know, Honoring parents and their choices isn't inherently bad. Teaching the truth isn't inherently bad. So since I have spent a lot of time now with Heritage Foundation propaganda and misinformation and garbage, I knew that there had to be more to it than just this document.
Yeah.
So I went and found a speech that was given at a Heritage event several months ago by Ryan Anderson, who is the president of the Ethics and Public Policy Foundation. He's a former Heritage Research Fellow. And the Ethics and Public Policy Foundation is another one of these Christian nationalist theocratic think tanks. They cooperated with Heritage and contributed to Project 2025. So they pulled this man in to give a speech endorsing why the Phoenix Declaration is so great, even though in his speech, he started out of the gate by saying, I don't know why I'm being asked to do this because I really don't spend a lot of time in the education sphere. And my wife and I actually tried to homeschool our
Let,
children, and our son was illiterate.
let me read that portion because this is, I think, a kind of a central thing. Like, this is one of the things that really stuck with me about your work this week. He says, he's talking to the Heritage Foundation, and he says, after I spent a wonderful decade as a research fellow at Heritage, writing books on marriage, marriage and religious liberty and discrimination, and transgender ideology, which I'm sure he knows so much about.
Yeah.
After moving to the Ethics and Public Policy Center as president, I wrote a book on abortion. So I have no idea why they invited me to a keynote, a gathering on education. I'm not an education policy wonk, though my work on religious liberty, discrimination, and gender ideology have all been cross-cutting in recent years with ed policy. And while I've taught at several colleges and served on the board, blah, 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 I'm not even a decent educator. My wife and I tried homeschooling, but our eldest was still illiterate. I mean, you make this point, which is so poignant. Men who admit up front they don't know what they're talking about, but get to pontificate about the truth anyway because they're white Christian men. That's who this guy is.
Well, that's who all of them are.
That's who all of them are. You're right.
And we see that happening across the government. So we have incredibly unqualified people in numerous positions who get to pontificate about all kinds of things because they're white Christian men now.
Yes.
So he's just another example of that, and how readily they will say, I really don't know what I'm talking about, and my kid was illiterate, but let me stand up here and tell you why you should listen to me about why this is important.
They, in your piece today, part of the section, you pulled out part of this piece, and this stuck with me in this same way as well. And he says, here's the reality. Every theory and approach to education has an account of human nature and human flourishing, either implicit or explicit, either true or false. And by the way, that's just a lot of words, right? Like if I was grading this as a, composition prof, I'd be like, none of this really means anything per se, because he also says per se a lot. Rousseau has an account. Randy Weingarten has an account. Aristotle has an account. Augustine and Aquinas have accounts. He's name dropping. Some are better than others. And when I say a theory of human nature, I mean a theory both of our potentialities and capabilities and of our fallenness, frailties, fallibility. And he says Augustine has a leg up on Rousseau there. But the bigger point that I wanted to make is he says some are better than others. And that sentence, in other words, is saying, I am the arbiter, right? I am the great judge of how we teach human flourishing and the theory of human flourishing. And it's like mind blowing. He's saying like, I get to be the judge of Augustine and Rousseau, right? Like I'm going to evaluate their theses and tell you the truth about them. It's so gross. And I just want to put up his stupid picture again because it makes me so mad. This is the guy. He's like, Rousseau was interesting, but he missed a lot of points that I'm going to elucidate here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's also, he graduated undergrad from Princeton, then he went to Notre Dame. He's a very devout Catholic, probably affiliated with Opus Dei in some way, the far right Catholic cult within the Catholic Church. So, to give some clarity about what his educational track is. But what I want to take away from that is what you read is something that Christian nationalists have been doing for a long time. They had a goal as far back as when I was in it to get into places like Princeton and get those bona fides that, greater America, a greater sector of America would go, oh, well, they're smart people and we should listen to them. And then they created these think tanks that have these fellowships, and they taught people and indoctrinated them into this way of thinking in the Christian nationalist way. Notre Dame also turns out people like that.
Right.
So, then he can name drop in a paragraph in his speech people like Rousseau and Aristotle. And that distracts people who aren't Christian nationalists to go, oh, well, he respects those people that I also respect. But he really doesn't respect them at all. He just drops those names in there as a distraction. That's a a ploy that Christian nationalists have been using for a long time. And so it takes the edge off of what he's saying. It makes more people on the left go, well, look, he knows about all these big thinkers that we respect. So he's really not as far out there as you're trying to say he is, Andra. You're just being ridiculous.
Right.
So they've learned how to do that.
Yeah. He's inserting a sort of like framework of logic to make illogical points. It's the sort of decorative crust on the shit pie of white nationalism,
Yeah. So, I have been spending a lot of time with his speech that endorsed in a full-throated way the Phoenix Declaration and what it intends to do, so that more Americans can understand what they're really saying when they say things. So he talks a lot in his speech about the truth and teaching the truth in our schools. And every time a Christian nationalist says the truth, that is code for the Bible.
Right.
And the Christian nationalist interpretation of the Bible. So every time you see the words the truth in something from the Heritage Foundation or any of these other Christian nationalist think tanks and organizations, the truth always, 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 always means the Bible and the Christian nationalist interpretation of the Bible. And so you can replace those words with the Bible and the Christian nationalist interpretation of the Bible. That was one reason why on Monday I showed a piece of artwork from Barbara Kruger, because she is a collage artist who's very renowned and does this thing where she takes things we know, like the Pledge of Allegiance, and replaces certain words in it on the screen. And so that's what I'm trying to do this week, even though I won't do it nearly as well as Barbara Kruger because I'm not an artist, but to help people get that kind of visual in their mind to say, when I read these people's documents and when I hear them speak, I can do that replacement in my own mind to understand what they're really saying.
And that's what your Substack has always been, is really a decoder ring of white Christian national, or translation of the, what the words say and what they mean, because they're often two different things. And I think I want to linger on truth, the idea of truth, for a second, because I think it's a giveaway to all of us wandering around with any kind of critical thinking or education. We imagine truth as a thing that is objective, right? It is something that has the quality of being true, and there can be gray area with certain moral conundrums and all this kind of stuff. But in their mind, what they're actually saying is the truth is totally, fully subjective. It is based on biblical, on the Bible, and then and truth is a matter of how I personally translate that text, right? And I think we have to really get our heads around that if we're trying to have these debates with them about, well, that's not true, we're using two different languages, like we're speaking different language. So you talk also about the word formation. What does that mean?
All right. So he talks in his speech about how important formation is as a grounder of education. Formation in the Christian nationalist world is code for indoctrination.
Right.
And indoctrination in the Christian nationalist worldview. And as you read through that paragraph and subsequent paragraphs, that's the only way that can be interpreted. We need to form people. We need to form their values. We need to form their morality. We all need formation. I mean, he says that so many times. And every time you see the word formation, forming, formed, that is code for Christian nationalist religious indoctrination.
Right.
And so, and he says it so much and makes it such a part of his argument that I want to make sure people understand that's what the Phoenix Declaration is calling for. Christian
Yeah.
nationalist religious indoctrination that they're calling formation of
He,
students.
it is. I mean, look, every child gets enculturated, right? And our job as parents and community members and family members is to bring up the child and pull them into the into the fray, right? Um, and I get a choice about how I want to do that with my children. Usually, it's a little bit unconscious. Like I don't think about every day how to enculturate my my children, right? Like
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
happens. They tend to take on my and my wife's values, and they prioritize the things that we tend to prioritize. I think that we need to get our heads around this because the Phoenix Declaration is saying you no longer get that choice with your children. I get the choice,
hmm,
right? Our goal is to enculturate your children on your behalf based on our values, and our values consist of truth, which means Bible teaching, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's formation, and it's saying we decide how your children are formed, not you.
Yeah, unless you're agreeing with them as a parent, then
Well,
of
right.
course you're right. But for all those children who are in homes that aren't Christian nationalist homes, this is an opportunity for Christian nationalists to indoctrinate them in the ways of their belief system, independent of their parents. And if their parents complain, then in Florida at least, they're going to have to come up with their own system of educating their children that doesn't include this kind of indoctrination now.
Well, so I want to. There are a couple of other words that I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about the Florida case because I think it's a canary in the coal mine. Um, Liberty and the good life, and like you said earlier, these words sound so benign and wonderful, and like, yes, we want our children to live the good life, right? But
Yeah.
again, good life is and good life is subjective, right? I get to decide what the good life looks like for me and my children, and as they grow, they get to decide what the good life looks like for them and their children, and on and on. But that's not what they're saying.
No, and I wrote about, because that the Project 2025 document also made living the good life part of one of their 4 promises. So within the first 10 days of my Substack last year, I was screaming about what, they're talking about living the good life. And most people are going, yeah, I want to live the good life. I want
Yeah,
to have a
sure.
yacht. I want to have nice vacations. I want to have a big house. I
Mm,
want to have more vacation. I want to have more money. That's living the good life for a lot of Americans. So they hear that, and it conjures those definitions.
yeah,
But living the good life to someone like Ryan Anderson, to people at the Heritage Foundation, does not mean that at all.
right,
Living the good life means living the Christian nationalist life, living a holy life. That is a good life. And anything else is a bad life, a not good life. So that is the only good life they're endorsing. And it's horrifying when you read it that way. The words liberty and freedom for them are even more horrifying,
right.
because what does freedom mean to you, Sam?
I mean, this is the thing. It feels pretty obvious. Right, right. It feels
Right?
obvious that, yeah, freedom means, the ability to move as I would like to move, the ability to make the choices that are meaningful to me and my family, and to make choices that not only align with my particular values, but also that align with my sort of economic or social needs at the time. Like all of that is packed into this like very complicated thing called freedom.
Freedom is, the ability to control your own mind.
Sure.
That's what James Madison said.
Yeah.
Make your own choices, make your own decisions, decide what matters to you. and then live your life that way. That's what freedom is for most people. Probably what freedom is to most people sitting here listening to us talk.
Sure.
That is not remotely at all what freedom is to a Christian nationalist.
Ugh.
Freedom, when they say freedom or liberty, means freedom from your old nature. Now, we've talked a lot about on various ones of these programs the doctrine of original sin, how Augustine called it that, coined that, because Eve ate the fruit first and tempted Adam to fall with her in the garden, which I'll say again, Christian nationalists believe that literally happened sometime between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. And, everything that they believe is grounded in that story from the
Right.
Bible in Genesis. So you all have here, Christian nationalists would tell you, a sin nature that you were born with because of that fall. And you can never be truly free until you reject that nature, until you accept that, you need to have a transformative event, a spiritually transformative event that rejects that nature. That's what true freedom is to a Christian nationalist. That's the only way you can be really free. And so when they talk about liberty and freedom, that's what they're talking about. And they all know individually, the people in the audience at the Heritage Foundation all knew every time Ryan Anderson said liberty and freedom, that's what he meant. But the rest of us don't know that. So they'll trot out in public and talk about liberty and freedom and laugh at us because we don't understand what they're really saying.
Right. And it's easy enough to at least, on, if you don't speak the language, to agree on certain points, because our terms are not defined. Again, they're just missing. They're just this.
Mhm.
And they are in on the joke, but we're
Mhm.
not. Except now we are, because thanks to you.
Right. But, it also sounds crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
we talk about this regularly too, that this whole separate language sounds like a conspiracy theory if you've never been exposed to a high control environment or Christian nationalism. It sounds like I'm just talking crazy smack. But, they speak this language amongst themselves, and they speak it out in the greater world on purpose to misdirect people who are hearing something else
Right.
to believing that this is really just not as bad as Andra Watkins is saying it is. She's just hysterical. They're talking about freedom. That's a good thing.
It reminds me a little bit, and maybe this is not a great analogy, but when privacy rights people sound the alarm, they're like, look, the big corporations are gathering all of your data, the government's gathering all of your data, all of your personal information. And there are those who say, well, if you don't have anything to hide, who cares? Like, well, that's not exactly the point. One day you may, or it's a matter of, like, again, defining freedom and having the ability to define those terms for your own self, or relinquishing that control and giving the control to someone else to define your life for you. And it's scary as hell.
Well, and in the next section of his speech, he talks about how all of this is political, that education is political, that we cannot be neutral on this kind of teaching values and teaching, this formation that Christians are called to make sure that education is not neutral.
Yep.
That by ejecting God from schools, ejecting prayer from schools, we've created this generation of people who don't understand real values and don't understand the truth and don't learn things that are truthful, which means biblical in their world. So, he goes on to tie all of this into the separation of church and state really didn't mean protecting the state from the church. It meant protecting the church from the state, and how we need to not be neutral anymore about taking back our schools and endorsing what they claim the founders really meant, which was, we are a Christian nation and need to be taught the truth as Christian nationalists define it.
So, I always go to this question, like, when we have our conversations, what does this look like practically on the ground? And how does this change, our daily lives? And I think we can look to Florida now because, as you said, they've adopted this Phoenix Declaration. How do they implement this? What does that process even look like?
The Board of Education is going to endorse specific curriculums that will teach, and I mean, as a product of these kinds of schools, as a child, they have their own curriculum that will teach things like Adam and Eve were created by God in the Garden of Eden, and that is science.
Oh my God.
And the United States was founded as a Christian nation, and all the founders are Christians, as history and civics. So, all of this indoctrination will be embedded into every aspect of education. It was when I was growing up. So, in every subject, science, history, civics, math, English,
Right.
these principles were embedded into the curriculum. And it is absolute total indoctrination. As a student, you cannot question what these books say. You're punished when you do. You're humiliated when you do. You're shunned when you do. You're labeled a problem when you do. So you learn not to ask questions. You learn to accept the explanations that you're given. And then you're taught how to parrot those when people then want to question you out in the real world. So that is what the Phoenix Declaration is calling for, and how, Florida public school curriculum now will be changed to align with a Christian nationalist. And I mean, DeSantis is a Catholic, probably Opus Dei adjacent
Right.
cult Christian nationalist himself, and has surrounded himself with people like that. So it will probably be the Catholic worldview, much as Ryan Anderson's view and much of the Heritage Foundation's view is the Catholic view of Christian nationalism as well.
And I think a couple of things. First, it's like, algebra has a set of sort of base rules by which you understand how to solve the problems, right? How to line up the equation. And what they're trying to do is create a baseline set, a baseline set of rules by which you can solve all of life's problems, and those rules are all biblical. So and what you're saying is, if you have a science problem that's inscrutable, you can't figure it out, go to the baseline set of rules that are all biblical, and from there you can solve the problem. And I think it's also why Christians always have to twist and turn and like go tie themselves into knots to make sense of what they're talking about, because none of it is actually algebra. The rules of algebra are sort of universal, right? Constants, like
Well, that's because God created them that way, Sam.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, obviously, I didn't have to say that, we all get it. But the next thing I was gonna say is that it sounds fabulous and it sounds crazy, and that Florida is Florida and all of this kind of thing. But if we think about this whole conversation we've had about the banality of their language, then you better be afraid, because there are school boards and there are state school boards and there are educators who will see this as a, like, well, we can tolerate this. They call for truth. Children do need some sort of moral foundation or formation. And it's a slippery slope, right? Like if I feel like personally, as a New Yorker, if my state makes any accommodation for this bullshit, they've made every accommodation for it. We can't let a single drop of this into our states, in my opinion.
Well, and that's why I wanted to devote so much time to it, because this is coming for your state.
It's coming.
Wherever you're listening from, it's coming for your state. And so, yeah, I know we flipped a lot of school boards, and I know that there was a lot of change in the last election that we can celebrate. But these people never get tired. They never stop trying to force their will on everyone. Never, ever, ever. So, yes, celebrate those wins, but then have even more energy to show up at public meetings when they're pulling out this document that sounds so benign and say, hell no, this is what this all really means. And let me read from actual people who talk about the Heritage Found, what they think this means, and tell you what the words they're saying mean, so that we can reject outright this blatant attempt to put Christian nationalist religious indoctrination front and center in all of our public schools and make us taxpayers pay for it. We're not going to tolerate that. So that's why I've spent so much time this week on this document, because, yeah, they've already adopted it in Florida, and now Floridians are going to have the ceaseless fight about what that means in their individual schools and communities against the state. But you're in a state now, most likely, that hasn't adopted it yet. So you have to be on the lookout for this and be very vocal and use what I'm teaching you to say, this is why we don't want this. Use the language key that I've given you to decode it and explain to people in your communities what they're really saying and why this is terrible.
Yeah. Spread the gospel of Andra Watkins.
Yes. I don't want to call it a gospel, though.
Spread the good word.
Yeah.
So, well, with that, I'd love to end on a high note or a more positive note. Thanksgiving is this week. And a lot of you are watching this on Sunday. I hope you had an amazing weekend and you were able to touch grass and eat and be with family in an enjoyable, mostly way. And Andra, what are you? Look, people have mixed feelings about holidays. I really like Thanksgiving. It's secular, right? I know that it's got a problematic history and all of this kind of thing, but what it means to me now is we get to take this little pause towards the end of the year and just reflect on the things that we're grateful for, that we're thankful for, and I don't think we do that enough, especially these days, because it feels like there's just not that much to be thankful for. So what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful to be alive. I'm extremely thankful for my husband. I'm thankful that I have a strong group of people who read and support my work, and share my work. Many of them, a small portion of them do that financially, which enables me to devote as much time to this as I do. I wouldn't be able to justify that if I had to do it for free. So I'm thankful that there are Americans who value my work and support it with money. I'm thankful to be not in the United States and to have realized the goal of getting out and living a life that is more true to my values. I'm thankful for my health, even though I'm 56 years old and have some things wrong with me. I'm mostly healthy, and I'm really thankful for that. So I could go on and on. I think about what I'm thankful for a lot, but what are you thankful for, Sam?
I'm thankful for, man, my family, obviously. I'm a pretty big family guy. And the, I was thinking about this the other day, that how I get to do this work that is so gratifying and really stressful a lot. You know, we have to watch the news and we have to have these conversations and all of that. But I feel like we're doing something. We're doing something, and we're using our natural. We get to use our natural ability and talents to do something good for the world, and I think that's incredibly lucky. I feel really lucky, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and y'all, there's nothing wrong with sitting around and trying to find what you're thankful for in a day or a week. I mean, I encourage my readers once a week to say what gave them hope,
Yeah,
and not in a, yucky, fake way, but reconnecting with what's hopeful is important too,
yeah,
because fascists want to destroy your hope. They want to destroy your gratitude. So don't let them take that from you.
yeah. We won't. Well, Andra, thank you so much, and I will see you next week.
Yes. Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.